Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Office Hours. My name is Jeff Blankenburg, and we're here every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We're here to answer your questions about Alexa development, ambient computing, software development, whatever you've got. If it's related to Alexa in some way, we're happy to sit and chat with you. So with that, I have a couple of housekeeping things I want to share before we get to our awesome guest that we have with us today. And the things that I want to let you know is that this week we have another Tech Talk coming up on Thursday. And you will be able to hear from Mark Yoshitake, who is the guy that runs our entire Alexa Skills Kit tech team. So if you think about things in the developer console and the CLI and all the other tools that we use to build Alexa skills, Mark's going to join me. We're going to talk about a bunch of the things that happened at Alexa Live. So make sure you check that out. I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Also, next week we are going to have a conversation with our Alexa Skill Insights team. You may have gotten emails about your skills that give you some recommendations or some ideas about things that you might want to implement inside your skills. You'll also see a lot of these kinds of recommendations in the new Alexa Skills Coach. And so if you want to know more about what their team is doing and how they think about it and the learnings that they have, looking at everybody's skills across the board, that team's going to be joining us next week in Office Hours. So make sure you tune in. All right, but let's talk about this week. This week, I have the good fortune of having Tariq and Alfredo here, and they're here to talk to us today very specifically about account linking, and even more specifically, voice-forward account linking. So Tariq, Alfredo, I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves. Thanks for being here.
For sure. Thank you, Jeff, for having us here. I'm Tariq. I'm a product manager with Alexa Skills Kit team, and that's actually a nice segue. Mark owns the team, and I kind of report to him as well. So my team is kind of building, helping skill builders craft experiences that make Alexa a natural part of everyday life.
Yeah.
That's great. Over to you.
Yeah. Hi, Jeff. Thank you very much for having us here. My name is Alfredo. I'm a senior software development engineer in the Alexa activation team. I'm also part of the Ask organization, as you mentioned. I work with Tariq very closely. And as Tariq mentioned, basically, we ensure to create and develop these tools for developers to ensure they can bring personalized experiences to customers. So that's what we do.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for being here. So as we talk about voice-forward account linking, it's probably important to talk about the basics first. So for those that may not have done this before, can you kind of give the quick background on what skill account linking is?
For sure. I can take that one, Alfredo. So account linking allows Alexa users to establish an identity, like establish a connection between their identity on the Amazon side and the identity on the 3P system. So that means that once linked, users can get access to their accounts, which they may have with skill builders outside of Alexa, and they can use their voice to naturally engage with Alexa and get access to those content and resources. That's broadly what skill account linking achieves. Now, what we have is a bunch of products, but we can get into details of that later.
I'm sorry, say that again. I missed that.
What we have now is like a bunch of products that can help you do that in a seamless way. And we're going to get into details of that right after.
Awesome. So as a quick example, one of the ones that I always use as a reference is for anybody that's used the Domino's pizza skill before. They are using traditional account linking. What this means is that you already have an account with Domino's Pizza. You already have all of your information and credit card information, your delivery address, all of that stuff, even the orders that you normally make. And so when you use the skill, by linking your account with your Domino's account, it can easily already know who you are, what your preferences are, again, all the credit card stuff. So that all you have to do is say, hey, I want my easy order, and boom, they know what pizza to send you. They know where to send it, and they know where to charge you for it. That is where I think the power of account linking really comes in. And it's something that I know a lot of developers really have some challenges with sometimes in figuring out how do I do this and what's the best approach. But it is such a powerful tool, and I'm so glad that we have something like that available. So I guess that leads me to my next question, though, aside from what I just described. Like, what are the benefits that developers generally see from using something like account linking?
Yeah, I can take that one. So just building on top of what Tariq mentioned, basically having this connection between an Alexa customer and a 3P customer, because that's basically what we're doing. We're creating a bridge between two identities. Having that allows 3P developers to know more about the customer. For example, if the customer has already granted, accept the terms and conditions on the 3P side, on the 3P website, then the 3P developer knows that the customer can use the Alexa skill. There are other benefits, like, for example, have more targeted and personalized advertising to the customer. I can track my customer through Alexa and through my web app and my mobile application. So I will say those are definitely mostly the benefits for developers.
Perfect.
And just to add to Alfredo's point, right? Like that was single biggest benefit, right? You can have your customers, for instance, start a game or a song on app or web and have them resume it on Alexa. And that's the beauty of what accounting offers, is this cross-platform experiences and customers to engage through that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that's also good for things like existing subscription services that you may have already had, right? They can easily get access to all the content you're paying for without having to buy it again or have a separate way to recognize that they've paid for those things. That's great. So I know we've talked a bit over the year or so about voice forward account linking. Can you give me a rundown on how, like, obviously, just to take a step back, I mean, we have developers here in the audience. As we think about account linking, we're thinking about a pretty traditional OAuth process, right? Where someone's going to go through, they're going to be taken to a hosted page by whatever the service that is. The user will have to log in. They get credentials or a token sent back that allows them to then authenticate themselves going forward. How does voice forward account linking change that?
Yeah. To answer it simply, like, I think we're not really changing what's happening in the background. What we're really doing is enabling customers to start that experience is what they would do otherwise on app or web on voice itself. And just to give you more context on the background of this feature, today when customers, before this feature itself was launched, when customers were asked to go link account, they had to find their way in the app, enter their username and password on that page that you just called out, the authorization URI. And then they're able to sort of get the sort of authorization code, and a bunch of steps happen, which is getting access tokens, refresh tokens from the 3P authorization server, and we store it in our systems. And then they're basically getting that experience. There's a lot of friction that customer had to face. And our customers asked us, like, why force them to go to the app when they're having conversation with their favorite Alexa skill? And that was the genesis of this feature, which is allowing customers to engage into this experience and share their information, which can be used to sign them in. And once that process is complete, we basically resume the session. So basically, it's no engagement lost. So the cliff that we were facing with account linking is not existing anymore. While we have solved for some of this app-related friction with products like app-to-app account linking, which I think is a beautiful product because it really flips apps if a customer is authenticated in both the apps. This voice forward is kind of another way for customers, another mechanism for customers who are interacting on voice and not necessarily on app or web.
Cool. And so as we think about that, and maybe it would help to explain to our audience what that voice forward component looks like. Can you kind of walk us through what a flow would look like for a user that's using voice forward account linking?
For sure. Alfredo, do you want to take that? I can take that as well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I can take it. So it's a pretty streamlined experience comparing the standard account linking flow. So basically, a customer will ask. I will also like to mention there is an amazing benefit, which is basically it's an ingress point for developers to get new customers. So let's say there is a skill that I just get to know. Someone told me about, like, this sleep sounds skill, which I should try just to sleep. So I don't know anything about the skill. I want to try it. I start with my Alexa. I tell the device, hey, open sleep sounds brown noise, and then the skill will open. It will get the session. This session will recognize that I have not account linked with this skill before. So with the benefit of voice for account linking, it can start the process, and it could tell me, oh, you know what, to get the best benefits, let's do account linking, and we can do that through voice. Then the skill will use skills connections, talking about more in developer terms, it will initiate a skill connection to our skill, which is basically a one-piece skill, which will handle the account linking experience. Then the skill will ask for permissions to the customer. Hey, do you allow me to share your information, like email, given name to this skill? Customer can consent or deny these permissions. After that, our skill will return the control to the 3P skill, and the skill can resume the experience. In the background, we're performing account linking for this skill. So basically, it's streamlined for the customer to continue doing this, and there is no need to go to the Alexa app.
Got it.
And I would like to just sort of add to that flavor that Alfredo just called out. So yeah, as a skilled developer, you don't need to worry about account linking steps or the interaction that needs to be managed. We ensure that all you need to do is explain the customers the value proposition you have for linking the account, and call our skill will take care of all the necessary steps, which is consent, presuming the validation. And once customers is successfully linked, we'll send them back to your skill. So that's how it'll work end to end.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we've covered the basics, right? We've talked about what is account linking, how does voice forward account linking is now. I know that we've only recently kind of made this available. So where is this currently available for developers?
It's available worldwide for all the locales except ARSA at the moment, and we are working to make that available in that locale as well.
Very good. Global launches are our audience's favorite, so that's always really, really good news. Normally by this point, we have a few questions from the audience, but I don't seem to have any done yet, although Phelpsync.net on Twitch just said, is that done via skill connections? And I think, Alfredo, you just answered that question, which is, in fact, that is done via skill connections, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Great. All right, let's see. I do have some comments coming in now. So let's see. David Curley. The question is, I want to capture some static information from users that's really awkward to input by voice. For example, alphanumeric strings, or like an email address. I know is for me always a really challenging one. I'm looking at doing this via account linking, but there's no actual service to link with. All I need is a user profile to store this info. Is Cognito user pools a good way to do this? Could I specify 2 to 3 custom attributes that the Alexa provided sign-up page would capture, and then they would be able to, available to the linked skill? Are there any limits on user pools? So I guess the question that David's asking, I think a lot of people might be thinking is, I don't have my own service today, but there is some information I'd like to know about my user that is far easier entered by mobile app or by website than it would be to try to collect that by voice. Email address being a great example of that. So what do you recommend for the people that aren't a big enterprise, that don't have a big old service sitting someplace that they can just authenticate against, but someone wants to set up something on their own? Is there a small scale solution that we recommend for something like this?
Yeah, I would probably lean towards another product called Skill Permissions instead of using account linking. So what you can do is you can enable permissions, and you can select the user information you want to capture on the developer console. And you can use a feature called voice forward consent. And I'll sort of give the link to you, Jeff, so you can post it on the public chat as well. But yeah, that feature will basically help you to get the consent itself when customers are interacting with your skill. And there you go. You'll have all sorts of user information that you can capture against the user ID.
Okay. And that's good for the permissions. I agree. Like phone number and email address are probably a bad example in this case. But let's say that there's some other important information that I want to capture that is not part of the user permissions data store, but I wanted to give a user an easy way to provide that information. Do we have a recommended method for creating our own kind of OAuth service that we can authenticate against with a user to be able to store just a few pieces of data rather than setting up an entire service?
Definitely using, as mentioned by David, using Cognito will be a good way to do this. Once you're linked with Cognito, you will get an access token that can get you access to that information. Okay. So that could be a way.
Are you guys aware of any, I know you're not specifically Cognito representatives here, but are you aware of any limits on the usage of something like that? I think that was one of his other questions.
Not to my knowledge here at this point, Jeff, but we can get back to you.
That's fair. No problem at all. All right. So the next question that came in is from Habuma, who says, I've not used voice forward account linking in a real skill yet, although I did tinker with it in a toy skill. I have, however, implemented voice forward consent in a live skill, and as best I can tell, it uses the same mechanisms, the connections.start connection directive. And he says that you can't use that directive and reprompt in the same request. And you shouldn't need to, but if you're building a request and throw in a reprompt before realizing you need to start the linking consent, it's not going to work. Let's unpack that. So one is I think his assessment is probably true. Habuma's been building for a while, but is there, can you give us maybe some understanding as to why that works that way?
Is the question more like, is voice account linking using voice consent in the back background and the flow is kind of similar? And what should I be implementing in my skill between the two?
No, I don't think so. I think the question is, if I want to use the connections.start connection directive, what he is saying is that in his experience, he's not also able to use a reprompt. Now, for us as voice developers, a reprompt is important because that allows us to continue the conversation with our users. And so without a reprompt, our skill will just speak to the user and close the session. So by using the start connection directive, this is basically handing it off to the voice forward account linking engine. Does that function very similarly to as the way we think about like selling ISPs, where this is actually logic that's handled by the Alexa service rather than the individual skill?
No, the logic, it lives inside of a 1P skill. So it's all handled by 1P skill, and also what we're mentioning about this voice forward skill consent, that's also 1P skill. So that is why we are handling all this with skill connections. We're sending information between those. To answer the question, this might had to do with the logic that lives as, for example, in our 1P skill, we have some control in our side to ensure that there are no reprompts there are no retries if the customer has already denied the consent. So it could be in the scenario in which the customer explicitly said, no, I don't want to give consent. So that might be the reason why there's a denial to do this kind of reprompt.
Got it. But I think at its base, the reason that you can't provide a reprompt is because when you provide that type of directive, you're actually handing off the control, conversation and the control to a first-party skill, something that Amazon owns and runs.
Correct.
And then I assume when the account linking flow is done, then that is handed back to me with some sort of request that allows me to know to come back to my control.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
It will, regardless of the flow, like regardless of whether the account linking itself was successful or not, we will invoke your skill back and you will have the customer back. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. No, I think that's very helpful. That's a good way to think about that flow and what the process really looks like. So Fangam on Twitch says that I mentioned earlier that you could start music in the music player, and then the music app will return to your skill. How does the music app know to return to me? Well, there's a couple of ways to handle this. And again, Tariq and Alfredo, if you have thoughts or if you have experience with the audio player, let me know. But my experience with this has been that the audio player has a couple of events. There's a song ended event, which would allow you to catch and then jump back into your conversation. There's also you can use you can have your own intent. Again, the user will have to say Alexa to interrupt the audio player, but if they say something like stop to the skill, if you catch that, instead of exiting the skill, you could stop the audio player and return back to your conversation. There's a number of ways to do that. I have to look at the actual syntax for this. I haven't done this in a little while, but I do know that you can stop the audio player by just having another intent. You have to interrupt the audio player with the wake word. And that's something that you would have to either let the user know about or hope that they are aware of. But in any case, if the song ends, you do have an opportunity at that moment to return from the audio player back to your skill. So Fangam, I'll see if I can dig up some more documentation for you on that. If I don't do it here on the stream, please feel free to hit me up on Twitch, or not Twitch, on Slack, and I'd be more than happy to. And Alfredo and Tarek, this is my opportunity to talk about Slack. If you guys are not already there, we have a Slack community that you can join at alexa.design/Slack. This is a community of just under 3,000 developers at this point that are there talking and chatting and sharing ideas and questions and, hey, how did you solve this problem kind of stuff. And it's absolutely amazing. Every time I go in there, I'm like, oh, somebody's got a question. I can answer that. And I look and there's already 17 replies and he's had the problem solved for half an hour. So it's a really, really great, helpful, inclusive community. People are very nice and kind. And even for the simple beginner questions, I'm absolutely amazed at how helpful a group of people can be. So for the two of you and as anyone watching, if you are not already in our Slack, I highly recommend it. It's a great place to see what people are thinking and what they're building and doing. So please check that out if you get a chance. All right, I'm going to turn that off. There we go. And jump back into our questions. So, there's a lot now. This is great. Okay. Brian Tarbox asked this in Slack this morning in a slightly different way. I don't know if you guys have any information or experience with the fallback intent, but his question is about that. So it says, is there any way to get information about what led to the fallback intent being triggered? The analytics are too coarse-grained, and even with full request response logging enabled, I don't see why fallback happened. So the only thing I can really tell you, because the fallback is kind of a fuzzy gray box for a lot of purposes, is that if you are using the NLU evaluation tool that's in the dev console, you can set up all sorts of tests that you can run against your model to see where it's going to land and how it's going to land and what slot values will be filled and all sorts of stuff. I could probably do an hour just talking about that tool. It's fantastic. But the fallback intent specifically is designed to catch those things that your model didn't otherwise know how to catch. It's usually something that is so far out of bounds that it couldn't match it with one of your other intents. So there's a number of reasons for this. One could be you have a very small model, and so your skill just doesn't have enough breadth or range to cover the kinds of things that you might be saying to it. Another thing you might look at is the fallback intent sensitivity. That's something that you can set right there on, I think it's on the fallback intent itself when you're looking at your intents in your list. But you can set the sensitivity to high, medium, or low. That may also help you. It'll be less intrusive than you potentially want it to be. But the fallback intent is generally meant to catch those things that are out of bounds. So by building a bunch of tests, you should be able to run those tests and see, like, why isn't this thing doing what it's supposed to do? Or why is this utterance that should land on intent A, why is it landing in the fallback intent instead? So those tests, much like anything I will say in code, if you're not writing some sort of unit test to know that your software works, how do you know it works? So that's my recommendation to you is think about building some tests, run those tests against your model every time you make major changes to that model to verify that everything's still working the way that you expect it to. But to answer your specific question is there a way to get more information about what led the fallback intent to being triggered? I believe the analytics that we offer on fallback intent is all that is currently available. I'm not aware of another way to do a deeper dive, but playing with the testing, setting the sensitivity, those two might help you a bit. Have you guys played with the fallback intent at all? I don't know if that's that falls into your realm at all. No, that's perfectly all right.
Yeah.
We are a very big team that covers lots and lots of topics, so I totally understand.
Yep.
So Oxygen Box has some feedback for you. He says, no voice experience should depend on using a mobile app. It's just a bad user experience. And don't get me started on clumsy, non-intuitive Alexa phone apps. So I don't know that he has more to add to that. But do we see a world, again, there's no promises being made here or feature releases or anything, but do we see a world in which users could potentially do account linking without ever leaving the voice experience?
100%, Jeff, to that question. And I do agree that having customers go to the OTP is not something ideal, at least for the voice experience. But we are ensuring security of the customers by doing a multi-factor authentication, given the state of our kind of how things are working in terms of recognition. So in future, I do believe, and this is the future, right? Like we do believe that recognition can be 100%, and we would achieve a state where users will not have to go to the app. Now, I agree, Alexa phone app is something that our skill builders don't really appreciate. So with this feature, we actually removed the dependency on Alexa app altogether. So you don't need an Alexa app to experience voice forward account linking, and you can still have your account linked.
Cool. That's good news. It's good, it's good to know that we have like that big picture vision as we head forward. That's great.
Absolutely.
All right. So W. Giorgio said, is there anything we need to do on our end to get skill personalization to work besides turning it on? I would like to know if others are using this. Some of our terms are so vague. Skill personalization. I want to make sure that I'm talking about the right thing. Give me 1 second to just ingest some information.
Yeah, please take it.
Yeah. Okay. So skill personalization is basically the ability to respond to individual user voices. Again, it doesn't it feels like it should say like voice ID or something like that, but that's fine. So skill personalization is the ability to recognize an individual user's voice and respond to them appropriately. It's kind of it's the same way that a lot of things like the widgets on the Echo Show 15 work, and it's able to recognize the user. And so not in a visual way, but in a auditory way. And so turning skill personalization on also gives you a new element inside your request JSON. And that I believe it's called speaker ID, but I could be wrong. Speaker ID sounds right to me. But so you've always had a user ID. This is an anonymized string that recognizes this is the same user over and over, but that user ID is tied to the user account. And if your house is anything like mine, like all of our devices are set up on my account, but my wife and my daughter and my son are using all of those devices also, and those are different voices. So you can use skill personalization as a way to recognize individual speakers. This adds some complexity to how you think about managing your users and managing your data, especially if you have long-running data, like they're playing a game and you're keeping track of their progress. This becomes a bit more challenging. Thank you, Alfredo. The property is person ID, not speaker ID. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
But that value now becomes the thing that you're going to use as your unique identifier. And so what I found that works the best for me is to pair them. It actually becomes a pair of values that you want to recognize. And you have to have some default value for when up until today, you've never used skill personalization. Someone's got progress in their game. You've probably been using their user ID as their unique identifier to recognize what their progress might be. Once you start using the person ID value, that changes. Now nobody gets to use the user ID field, and you have to use the person ID instead. But again, this is a very, you want to be careful about how you use this, because it's also possible that you may not receive a person ID value, and then you need to be able to fall back to just using user ID instead, or managing what you're going to do in those situations. So it does add a little bit of complexity to how you manage your skill, but being able to interact and engage with someone based solely on the sound of their voice and greet them by name and do a number of other things can be really powerful. So it's definitely worth playing with and implementing in your skills, but it's also important to think about what that actually ends up meaning, because you can run into some tricky scenarios.
Yeah, just to add to that point, right? Like person ID, I think it helps skill builders to create experiences, individual experiences for different members of a household, which today, because Alexa is a communal device, any voice can interact and get the same experience with the skill builder. But if they want to differentiate voices and give them separate experiences, this is where it comes beautifully. I think what you also highlighted is super important, which is there can also be unrecognized voices for which you want to handle the scenarios where person ID object may not be present. So that's where I would be a little careful about how you implement the fallbacks for every intent.
Got it. Okay, so we're back. So a lot of times on office hours like this, someone will ask me a question and we'll give an answer, and then it will only cover 75% of their questions. So then they'll come back and say, hey, there's a follow-up or something like that. So earlier we were answering a question from Fangelm, who was saying, you mentioned that my skill could start music in a music app, and then the music app will return to my skill. How does the music app know to return to me? Is the question that Fangelm asked earlier. And the follow-up is, sorry, I didn't mean when using the audio player. I meant using the account linking to an app like Spotify or Amazon Music. And so I'm not sure I fully understand this question, or at least maybe the approach that you're taking. But when we think about an Echo device, and I use Apple Music, but we could be Amazon Music, Spotify, they all basically work the same way, which is that you have behind the scenes at some point set up who your music provider is. So you said, oh, I use Spotify and here's my credentials. I've done the authentication. So now I have a token to listen to music on that service. When you ask your device to play a song, what it's actually doing is grabbing that audio file, playing it in our audio player on the device, and then it will move on to the next song if it's a playlist or a radio station or something like that. And if it's just the one song, then it will stop. What you're asking, and you're mixing concepts that I don't think are very mixable, which is, how do I do account linking in my skill with something like Spotify or Amazon Music? There isn't really a good way to do that. your skill can kick off playing music that you have ownership over. If you have audio files or tracks that you're legally allowed to play, then that works fine. But if you want within your skill to take advantage of the user's individual music provider, that is not something that is possible today. The user can ask their device to play music, but you can't on their behalf say, hey, go play this song out of their music subscription. That's a cool idea, but it isn't something that's doable today. So I hope that answers your question, Fang Elm. Please let me know. I'd be happy to follow up more. I feel like I'm misunderstanding you, but I want to make sure that I get that right.
I just want to add on that. Let's say, as you mentioned, Jeff, that in this case, the developer has actually legally being able to play music, has some resources on music. The way to know will be through the access token. So you have resources on your creepy side, and your customer asked Alexa to start playing music. The access token will be provided through your skill. Then from your skill, you can fetch the content that the customer has access to. Then if the customer resumes or goes through your creepy app, to your mobile app, since it's the same user, you can fetch what is the last content that this customer was playing. So in that case, the customer can resume the activity. So that's one of the benefits of account linking. You can get to know what the customer is doing through the same access token because it's an identity under your authorization service.
Yeah. So I guess, Fangel, if you were asking like, hey, I work for Spotify, how does this work? I think that would make a lot of sense. But Alfredo, I want to make sure I'm clear. You didn't just suggest that if I have just some random 3P skill, that I somehow have visibility or access into what someone's listening to on Spotify. Like that data doesn't exist, right?
No. It's just own the information that you own as a company, as a 3P.
Exactly. Great point. So phelpsync.net said, please do a tech talk on the NLU tool. I may have to do that. So Jamie, let's write that down. I think that would be a really useful walkthrough of our NLU tools. And there's a number of them. There's a voice and tone tool that lets you hear what things sound like, and you can piece together phonemes and sounds and all that kind of stuff. But there's also the NLU evaluation tool that lets you run a whole series of tests with text against your model. There's also the ability to create custom audio files that can run against your skill. So it does the full TTS and everything, speech to text conversions, and then runs that against your models. So lots and lots of good content in there. I'll have to look for a way to do that. Brian Tarbox is back. If you guys remember, he was talking about the fallback intent. And so his question is a bit more info. In the frequent utterances for unhandled requests, it lists the yes intent and the no intent. I have a yes and no handler, so I don't understand how they can be unhandled. Yeah, Brian, you and I would probably have to dig into this one a little more to take a look at what's going on there. My only thought is that you mentioned that you have a yes intent. I assume we're talking about the Amazon.yes intent and the Amazon.no intent, like the built-in intents that we offer for those, and not your own custom ones. Your own custom ones could potentially miss things because ours are deeply trained. It's a huge list of terms that would qualify for yeses and nos. So if you're using yes and no answers, I always recommend using the built-in yes and no intents. If you're building your own, that's fine. Somebody else was talking about that on Slack just this morning. But you may find that it has some inconsistency or just doesn't cover the breadth that our built-in ones do. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know how your yes and no intent could be unhandled unless, yeah, no, I think, Brian, we're probably better off just trying to unpack this a little bit. This might also be a really good contact us request. I think they might have better visibility into, exactly what's going on with your specific fallback intent. Okay. We have gotten to the bottom of my list. Let's see. I know we have, we still have 20 minutes or so. So if you guys have any more questions specifically for our account linking team, if you have anything else about Alexa, we'd be happy to chat about it. For those of you that haven't or didn't notice this morning, I also used to do, about a year ago, I used to do almost daily live coding sessions where I would just get on, get on Twitch and YouTube and stuff, and I would just sit for an hour and build things. And I restarted that again this morning. So if any of you missed it, you can find me on all the services as @Jeff Blankenburg. But I streamed for about an hour and a half this morning, working on a new skill. And one of the things that I got hung up on is that I had scraped all of the data we have for all of the sound effects library. We have 3,018 sound effects in the Alexa sound effects library. And what I wanted to do is, as part of my skill, give the ability for developers to say, hey, play that sound effect. I want to hear that one. I want to hear what it sounds like. Today, if you want to do that, you have to open a browser, go navigate, find the Alexa skills, the sound effect library. You have to scroll or search and find the one that you're looking for. You have to open this little tab, and then you hit play, and you can hear it. It felt like if I'm already sitting at my desk and I'm building skills and I want to know what a sound effect sounds like, it would be cool to just ask the device to play that sound for me. So I had, this is probably a year ago, I had scraped that entire page and gotten all the metadata that I needed into a database that I could use for my skill. And I went to use it this morning so that we could search and like ask for a specific sound effect. And it turned out that everything has changed. All of the paths, all the URLs for all of the sound effects have changed, at least in some way. And so I had to spend a little time this morning kind of reworking and rescraping all of that data to pull it back into my database so that it'll all work the way that I want it to. Anyway, so if you want to see, I'm building a skill that is meant for skill developers. So it can do things like play all of the speech cons that we have, or sound effects, or if you want to see what it's like to use the shopping actions, right? It's already got it built in so you can buy an Echo device. Now, it does warn you like, hey, you really did just buy an Echo device. So make sure to go to your Amazon.com account and delete the product, the purchase, unless you really want it still. But the point of this skill ultimately will be for developers to get a feel for what the experience is like, right? What is it like to buy an ISP? Because Alexa says some things that you don't control, right? There's conversation in there that is not part of what you would write. So anyway, I'm going to be doing this at least Tuesdays and Thursdays. It'll be kind of early morning Eastern time. But that being said, if you guys want to tune in, check it out. I'll be doing a bunch of live streaming in the near term. Jalwork asks a good question. I don't know if you guys know the specific answer to this question, but you might know the general answer to this question. The Amazon.send to phone intent is still in developer preview. How can they go about getting a notification when it's gone GA? Do we have a mechanism for that today to know like, hey, a cool new launch has happened, other than just like plugging into our marketing channels? Do you guys know?
I think most of the times whenever these new launches happen, they happen either through Alexa Live communication or the subsequent blog posts that are out. So I would say just stay tuned to our blog posts and stay tuned to Alexa Live event launches, and hopefully this could be available during that time. But specifically when it's going to be available, I think, Jeff, I don't have an answer to that right now.
Yeah. No, I'm not looking for the actual answer. I'm just looking for how would they subscribe in some way to be notified when it is available. I don't think we have a mechanism like that today, but it's something that we might be able to look into. So I'll add this to my list of things we should look into. Fang, this is a great question. For all of you that have ever built a skill in multiple languages before, especially if it's just like all the English languages, you add all of those locales, and then you will notice at the top of in fact, let me just show this because this is a good question, Fang. I'm just asking here. Nope, that's the wrong one, Jeff. Page, and then I'll share my screen with all of you. Okay, so I'm going to go to screen sharing, and we're going to turn on just this. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. We're going to go into my little voice developer skill that we're working on. Actually, this is a bad example. Let's go to something else. Like you can see here, games back, it says English, IN +4. And you can see that if you hover over this, it shows you all the languages that your skill is currently available in. This is a tricky problem. By default, it shows whichever one is alphabetically first. Of all the locales you have, the sort order on here just happens so that English IN is pretty much the first one, unless you're supporting Arabic. English IN will be first. And if you go into that skill, so I'll go in here, and we look at, nope, I've deleted that. So let's go to the dev version of that. If we look at this, you can see that up here at the top, it says English IN. It also chooses for you by default whatever locale happens to be, well, that isn't even alphabetical, but for whatever reason, English IN is always the default. And you can change it to English US, and then you're working on the US interaction model versus the Indian one versus the others. So as far as seeing this in your list here, your list of skills, there isn't really a way to change this. But it is important when you see this to know that when you go in to edit your skill, that by default, it's going to be on that one. And you need to change it to the one that you actually want to change, which in this case is probably English US if you're a US developer. This is a very large piece of feedback that I have provided to our product team. There's a very large document I've mentioned to a bunch of you that I've been working on and sharing with the team. So this is something that is on their radar, in addition to like hundreds of other little things. And so this is something I hope we'll see some progress over the next 3, 6, 9 months. But I'm intruding on what is already a tight development schedule for a lot of the things that they're working on. So they're doing their very best to try to fit this stuff in and add it to sprints as they're going. But I don't have any promised timelines on a lot of this. So we'll take my screen sharing off and jump back to our questions. All right. W. Morgan on Twitch says, I would like Alexa to have more templates for the progressive notifications. Right now, it's pretty limited. While this isn't a question, it's a good comment, and I agree with you, W. Morgan. If you have recommendations for the kinds of templates that you're looking for, that's the kind of action that I can take to our teams and say, hey, they're looking for stuff like this. How can we consider building more progressive responses, that kind of stuff. So W. Morgan, if you want to reach out to me, and I've done this before, you can find me literally everywhere at Jeff Blankenburg. Pick your social network. I'm on there. Even shoot me a DM on TikTok if that's your thing. But I'll also throw my email address up here just for a second. If any of you have a very specific issue or concern, you can reach out to me directly. Happy to help. Turnaround time is not always minutes. It could be a day, but I will do my best to get back to you or follow up or do what I can to help. So hopefully that will get you headed in the right direction. Okay. Kapil Verma on LinkedIn says, is this possible to working in India currently? I think it's possible to do this in India is what he's asking. Yes, you can build a full breadth of Alexa skills in India. On top of that, I don't know if you were asking about something specifically, but on top of that, as all the account linking things that we were talking about earlier, as Tariq mentioned earlier, is available globally. So that should also be available there, right? You mentioned there was one locale that it's not available.
It's the ARSA, Jeff.
Okay, so the Arabic language is not available yet.
Yep.
But in India, that should work.
That's correct, yeah.
Fangam also wants to know if we can post a working Alexa routines kit sample that creates an Alexa routine on GitHub. Yes, we can do that. This is something that we are supposed to do every time we launch a new feature, is that there should be a sample on GitHub for you to do that exact thing. But if it is not there, I will look into that and see what we can do about getting it there. I will also have, as I mentioned, this skill that I'm working on. I'm going to do, if I can find this quickly. I go to my GitHub and I find my repositories. It's not finding it quickly. Give me one moment. Sort by last updated. Why am I not finding the repo that I have on? Interesting. I wonder where I published that if it wasn't here. Anyway, I won't be able to show you that. But I am as I work through this skill I mentioned, it's going to try to do all the things. You will all of that source code will be available on GitHub as well. But I will have to take a little time to get that available because I'm not able to find it right now. Okay. Andy Muncie, hey, can you help me with Case ID? Andy, I have looked into this, so I will see and check in on see what's going on, see if there's anything else I can do with help with that. Gavin Watson says on Facebook, I typically get emails about new stuff. He thinks it might have been an option somewhere. This is about like subscribing to knowing when new things have launched. I feel like there's an email subscription for our blog. That certainly would cover some of the bigger stuff. But for smaller things, that it wouldn't come through there. Yeah, I don't know of a good way to subscribe to getting the latest release updates other than to look at a page that is on our developer console, developer.amazon.com. Let's see if I can find this fast. If I go to Alexa, and then there's a what's new, if I get to the right place. What's new? Yeah, so this page, I'll drop it in the chat. This is the what's new page. So there's a bunch of stuff on here. This should also include things like latest news, release roundups. We have the Alexa Skills Kit feature updates. Our latest releases are as of Alexa Live, so most of them are on 720, but you can see they go back even further than that. We also have a Get Connected page, which lets you know about events that we're going to be at and content that you can consume, like Tech Talks and Office Hours. It lets you know about our Slack community, where our GitHub is, events, like I said, all that kind of stuff. So including ways to connect with me. So please check out those pages as well. Okay. Phelpsink.net asked, what is ARK, A-R-K? And that's the Alexa Routines Kit. This is what allows you to create routines for your users, ideally in a way that uses your skill. So if you wanted to create a routine with a specific phrase that users could use to fire up your skill or go to a specific custom task inside your skill, that's what ARK is for. So Alexa Routines Kit. Andy also wants to know, how do you link your Amazon Associate account to your Alexa developer account? Well, today you don't. Today there isn't a way to use Amazon Associates yet. I know I mentioned earlier about shopping actions. It does allow you to sell products from Amazon.com, but there is not any Amazon Associates angle to that. I know we've discussed that will be a part of it, but I don't know what the timeline is on making that actually happen. So, Andy, today I don't believe that there is a way to link your associates with your developer account. Fangel also wants to know, can one intent invoke another intent? And the answer is kind of. We need to be very specific about what we mean by these things. So when we think about an intent in our model, this is something that catches the user's speech and drives them to a specific bit of code in our service that we call a handler. The handler catches the action of the intent. The model can't reroute you and say, oh, I actually want to send them to this intent instead. But what you can do on your service side, and I do this all the time, is that you can have your handler, I have a handler for each of my intents. You could have your handler have some kind of condition that says, if X and Y are true, then I actually want to do this other intent. And so you could say, if X and Y are true, then what I actually want to do is return the results of this other handler function. I do that all the time. And yes, that is more or less invoking another intent. But I want to make sure that we're really clear about the distinction. We're talking about chaining handlers, not necessarily chaining intents. Intents are a baked-in part of the model and not really that malleable, especially at runtime. So I think what you're describing is, how do I have a handler for one intent respond even though a user used another intent? And you can definitely do that. I have some mechanisms I use for doing that in Node.js. That's where I spend most of my time. But I also know that it's very easy to do this with Python as well. Okay. What else have I missed here? Guys, you're being super patient. Thank you. W. Giorgio says, I asked this in Slack, but does the speak item karaoke mode still work? If so, I can't get it to work. Have you guys played with the karaoke mode at all? I don't actually know this one off the top of my head.
No,
I haven't either.
It's all right. Sometimes I find a diamond in the rough where you're like, actually, yeah, I worked on that a year ago, and that's okay that you don't know. W. Giorgio, I don't know, but let me take a look and see what we can find. So a speak item for those of you guys that aren't familiar, there's a karaoke mode in APL that allows you to feed some speech in. As it reads it, it highlights the appropriate line. I think that should still work. I don't know why they would have removed it, but I'll take a look. How do I add navigation support? So this comes from Ravija on LinkedIn. How do I add navigation support in the Alexa Auto SDK sample app? Whew. I don't know. I actually haven't used the Alexa Auto SDK. I feel like this is something that I need to do, but I have not done that yet. So I'm going to add this to my list of things that maybe I can look into. This might also be a useful opportunity as I think about my team behind the scenes. Maybe we try to get the Alexa Auto SDK team to come on and talk about building skills that work with Alexa Auto. That might be pretty cool. Okay. Fang Elm, thank you. I should have said handler. No, it's no problem. Don't worry about terminology. I want to make sure that I'm being clear and that I'm answering your question appropriately. So as I mentioned earlier, with skill personalization, that's one of those things that it's like, man, that's really vague. I can't remember what skill personalization actually is. Give me a second. And I have to dig in. So words are words, and we got to figure that stuff out. Brian Tarbox says, I'd love to see an office hours devoted to the various pages in the Alexa Developer Console. We could certainly do that. I'd get to answer a lot fewer questions, but we could certainly do that. I think what's probably better is that I could do a 1 hour like deep dive tour tech talk kind of thing, where I just give everybody some guidance on like, hey, that's why this thing is here, and that's why this button does this thing, and here's why these things work this way. That might be an interesting tech talk. I think based on the deep dive I just did with our dev console, I have a lot of really good insights and feedback on exactly how and why some of these things do what they do. So yeah, let me toy with that. I mean, I'm not going to have it for you next week, but let me see what I can do to pull something like that together. Phelps Inks is also on board with that. Well, as we're wrapping up here, guys, I know we have just a few minutes left. Tariq, Alfredo, is there a way that if people wanted to reach out and get a hold of you without just giving them your email address or your phone number or your home address or anything crazy like that, is there like, are you guys on LinkedIn? Is there a way people could track you down if they wanted to?
For sure. I'll just put my LinkedIn profile ID on the chat and you can pass it on. Yes, I'm available there to take in questions.
Cool. That is excellent.
Yeah, I can definitely do the same. Please feel free to reach me out to LinkedIn. Also, thank you, Jeff, for letting me know about the Slack channel. I will definitely join, and I would like to take some questions about account linking. So.
Cool. What we can actually do is, if it's not already there, and I don't even have Slack open on my machine right now. Let me look really quickly. We have a bunch of private channels that are kind of hidden behind the scenes. So you have to go to the channels, and there's a little plus sign, and there's a bunch of other additional channels that you get. And in there, I'm going there now. Is there account linking already? There might be. There is not. So what I could do is I could create an account linking channel for you, and you could just say, "Hey, I'm going to hang out there." And if people have account linking questions, they could add them to that channel specifically.
That'd be nice.
That does not look like I have one. So let me. I'll just create it now. Account linking. Channel to discuss everything about Alexa account. Okay. That channel is created. It's open to the public, so anybody can join. So if you guys want to get in the account linking channel and you want to talk with Alfredo or Tarek or anyone else that might be in there, go to the account linking channel. That's a great place to do it. But if you have general questions and you're not sure where to start, or you don't know that channel exists, general is a great place to start. And people will say, hey, this is getting really deep. Why don't we move this to the account linking channel and we can go from there. So always happy to create new channels if there's a group and an interest. I think it's always a good idea. So let's see if I'm missing anything else. Is there a forum for Alexa Auto where we can get good support? I don't know the answer to this question, but this leads me to think that maybe we want to talk with the Alexa Auto team and just see what we can do there. There are a few places that I might recommend. Alexa developer forums. I think they have some stuff there. I go to the Alexa developer forums, and I say auto. Yeah. So what I might recommend you do is start at our Alexa forums. This is something that we've had around for quite a while. I'll add it to the chat here. You might ask your questions about Alexa Auto there. My other recommendation, again, for everyone, is if you run into an issue and you're not sure how to solve it or you're not sure who to talk to, start with Contact Us. You can go to this page, you can fill out a form and say, here's the issue I'm facing. You will get a ticket. So this is something that our team can follow and track and observe. And it gives you an opportunity to directly engage with Amazon and say, hey, this is the problem I'm facing. Please find me some help to do this thing. So please use Contact Us for that purpose. If you run into a bug or an issue, or even if you have a problem with certification, like this is the place that you should go to reach out to us in an official capacity. I mean, you're welcome to reach out to me, but I'm oftentimes going to say, I can't really escalate this till you have a ticket. And once you have a ticket, then it's easy for me to push back to the teams and say, hey, this person with this ticket is having this issue. Can we please look into it? But without that kind of trail, without that official communication, it makes it a little bit harder. Okay, so let's drop these in here. I have Tarek's LinkedIn is coming your way, and I have Alfredo's LinkedIn coming your way. But again, find them on Slack. That's always a good way to go as well. Okay, let me make sure that I haven't missed anything else. Kevin Evans says, awesome questions, conversations today. Thank you, Kevin. Let's see. Thanks for this. David Curley says, I'd like to see some more advanced official training, maybe even certification to keep pace with these great new features that keep coming. Something beyond cake time. Totally agree, David. We are working on this. The first phases of that you may have seen is the Alexa Learning Lab. We announced this at Alexa Live. If you want a deeper dive on APL, that's the course that we offer today. You can check out the Alexa Learning Lab and go through that course. I think that there is aspirations to apply some sort of certification or at least a certificate of some kind that shows that you've passed and completed these courses. And we'll continue to build more courses for that in the future. But, generating, training content is hard and time consuming. So I want to make sure that I set expectations, but we are actively working on that. All right. I think that is it. We are right at the time. Thank everyone for tuning in. We really do appreciate you. And office hours doesn't work very well if you're not all here. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your questions. They're always welcome. And we're glad that you're all here. I certainly want to make sure, let me turn off my little banner so they can see your names. I certainly want to thank Tariq and Alfredo for being here. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Jeff, for having us. And thanks, everyone, for the questions here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So as I mentioned, we'll have a tech talk with Mark Yoshitaki this coming Thursday. You can tune in for that. I think we've shared some links in the chat. So make sure you tune in for that. We're going to be talking about all of the cool things that happened at Alexa Live. In addition to, there we go, alexa.design/skills Q&A. So that's a place to go register and get signed up for that. Next week, we're going to have the Alexa Skill Insights team here talking about a bunch of cool things. And that's all I have for now. So with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you, everybody, again, and we'll see you next week.